Good evening and welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today we have Ryan Smith on. Ryan, how are you? I'm
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
doing good. Ryan is a guitar player now in Soul Asylum. He also has some solo stuff, and he also has a project, Ryan and Pony, right?
Yeah.
And you were also, we were just laughing at this beginning. You were first known, your first band is so hard to pronounce, is,
The Melismatics.
there we go. I'm not going to say that.
All right.
But
Don't
you
worry.
guys were pretty, that was your first big thing, right? You guys were pretty big.
That band played a lot of shows, did a lot of stuff. I mean, we would be on the road for huge chunks of the year. I mean, we maybe 150 shows a year was our kind of average, and we went all over the place. We played Lollapalooza and made I don't know how many albums. I think at the end of it, 7 albums, and the band hasn't broken up. I mean, we're talking loosely about future making another record, and but we made a number of albums, toured all over the country, went to other countries and made music videos and did a lot of stuff. It was fun. Yeah, and still is fun. That band's like a family. So
And there's a couple albums on iTunes I was checking out prior to this too. Very fun, very poppy punk kind of. Would you call it alternative? I hate putting
well,
words
it's all
together. I
right.
don't know
You
how
mean
to.
the melismatics, what how it
Yeah,
um
it's kind of a poppy punk.
well, the band changed a lot over the years. When we started as pretty much guitar, punk rock, but then mellowed out to doing it really evolved. Our first actual album, by the time we made that, we were making, we called it sci-fi uh, indie rock, but it was poppy, punk influence, but it had a lot of
Mhm.
synthesizers, and we would put a lot of space sounds. There was a song we had like Pac-Man is like we were playing Pac-Man as part of the song. I mean, so and then some of the lyrics were about things like, there's a song called Laser Beam or Laser Beam, and just to give you some idea of where we're coming from. And then from there, we made our second album that was called Postmodern Rock, and we had recently, well, not recently, quite a while, re-released that album with some bonus cuts because it was the 10-year anniversary of that. And then our second album veered a little bit more heavily into like we try to keep it really pure to guitar rock music.
Mhm.
We were pretty specific to not use any synthesizers. We used some like an organ, but it was all very guitar based. And then it evolved from there. We had a few member changes, and then it ended up involving everything from electronic music to pop punk and indie.
It mixes really good because what I did is I took the ones that were on iTunes, I downloaded them all in a playlist, and I just
Mhm.
shuffled them, which is the ultimate test of a band of how it works. Is it, abrasive from song to song, or how does it flow? It all fits. It didn't feel like you were like all over the place as a band. It was kind of fun.
Well, that's good. That's good. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I mean,
I'm glad that worked.
but doing it that way, I was like, I don't know how to classify this music because it's like all over.
Yeah, I think that was like that band's blessing and that band's curse, is the fact that, we had a name that was really challenging to pronounce and remember.
It's the
And
worst
then
name.
marketing wise, we were kind of in our own universe. I mean, we played a lot of shows with other bands that made sense, but when it came down to it, some bands like fit into a niche where it's like they go
Mhm.
on, we just didn't have that kind of, we just existed in our own universe. And not that it was like so unique, it was just we didn't quite fit in with any other band exactly. So, but ironically, we would hear a lot of comments of people in Minneapolis, some of the older school venue people, like one of the stage manager at First Avenue used to always tell us when the Melismax started, he said, you know what, you guys remind me of Soul Asylum when they started out. Like you guys have
I
that
can
same
hear that. I can
spirit.
hear that.
Yeah. So we used to hear that a lot, having no idea that that's where, I would end up joining that band. But there's probably some kind of similar energy that a lot of Minneapolis bands have for whatever reason. Maybe we take in a lot of the same influences and have similar experiences.
It feels like you guys could just really rock out a good acoustic guitar and a really good. There's always a good pop sensibility with some fun lyrics. little fun word game in between. That's what kind of the it feels like the theme between the two is,
Yeah.
you know.
No, I think you're right. I mean, like, can the song break down to, like you said, an acoustic guitar? Like, could you, even if it is a, full throttle rock and roll song, will
Yeah.
it survive being played on an acoustic guitar? And are the lyric, yeah, trying to play on words and things like that. Those are all common things between those bands. And again, I think other Minneapolis bands too. I think it's kind of in the
Oh, really?
water. Yeah.
What you got to do when you guys get together is think of an easier name for the rest of us.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah. Like I said, I think I told you before we started the interview officially that our
Yeah,
manager for many years like had the hardest time pronouncing our name.
the
We would,
melismatics. The
yeah,
melismatics.
he call us the meslamatics, or we'd have people call us the mellowsmatics. And for a while, we would just when we were on tour, we would take pictures of venues that butchered the name or just misspelled it, and it was pretty amusing. But you look at it and you go, oh, maybe that wasn't the smoothest marketing move, but lots of bands do that. There was no other band with that name. I guess that was,
It was unique. It's what was the Oneaters, the Wonders. It was the whole.
yeah, right, yeah,
right, yeah.
It was right. It was like the Oneaters, yeah.
That's pretty funny. So, how did you end up going from there and probably got hiatus, then going into Soul Asylum? How did that change happen?
It was really interesting. I mean, it happened very organically and almost like there was some good fortune in the fact that, what happened was, so Melismax on the road for many years. I think we were making, it was our last studio album that we made and promoted was Rising Tide. And that was in, I believe, 2013, if memory serves me correct. And then we put out a couple singles after that and a compilation record of unreleased music the following year. But we got pregnant with our child, Skylar, and that was one of the reasons we had to scale back touring, because obviously, you just can't do what when you're going through that kind of life change, you have to make adjustments. But it was that, and I think we had been working so hard. I mean, we were relentless, and I think that everybody needed a break, and rightfully so. I mean, I was honestly pretty bummed personally when we decided to slow down, because that's like all I really, I mean, it's not all I cared about, but I cared about it a lot. It was,
That's all you did for the longest time. It's like when you have a job and you get laid off and you lose your self-esteem. You're like, well, that's my identity. It's who I am, sort of.
Right. There's a huge part of my identity that was that. And obviously, it's a limited part of my identity, but it's a big part. And it just like anybody's, if you're passionate about what you do, that's like going to be a big deal. And then there was a little like, so when that slowed down, I was already, working on songs for another record. And so that's how Ryan and Pony kind of started from that. There was basically, I was going to start a new band with a new name, and the record label that we were on and are on now, Pravda Records out of Chicago, they said, don't, come up with a new band name, just call it Ryan and Pony, because we would be in it and we were basically just going to find a drummer.
Right.
Who we found Peter Anderson, who's a longtime friend of ours, and he's just an incredible musician. Great.
Is he the one who's on the album?
He's on the album.
Okay. Yep.
And he's been in many well-known bands from Minnesota, the Honey Dogs. He's been in Run Westy Run for many years, and then he's in the Ocean Blue. And he's really, really good musician and good friend of ours. So we've known him forever. So he was like kind of the obvious fit for that. And anyway, that's how that kind of started. And that was quite a while ago. That was what I thought I'd be working on. So I started making the songs for Moshi Moshi, the Ryan and Pony album. That was back in
like 2016 or something, right? You had a single around 2016 is like when the first
right. Yeah. So the first single came out. Yeah, that you know that better than I do. I wouldn't have remembered that, but the I started making the recordings in 2014. So for Moshi Moshi, which came out in 2020. So as you can tell, there was an interruption in there. So I was also playing bass for the for Phil Solem, good friend of mine from the Rembrandts, and then the Rembrandts started playing, and I did some stuff with that. That seemed like, oh, I might be doing this, and then got the call from Soul Asylum to try playing with them, and that went super great. We gelled pretty much instantaneously. It's the kind of thing where, when you play with somebody and you feel
Oh
like
yeah.
this is what, you know when it's right, like this feels like this should have been,
You see it in the videos. I'm sorry, you see it in the videos that you guys have done. Those are, you can feel the energy of you guys. It's really fun. Those
oh,
little
that's
acoustic
great.
things. I don't think it's, you can really feel that you guys, you can feel the, I almost feel like Dave's like almost like re-energized. Like it's not nothing negative before. It's just like, it's kind of something a little different, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little different and, eat fresh, you know, bring in fresh blood. You get,
Yeah.
there's just an invigoration to, to do it. It's exciting. I've always thought Dave is one of the greatest songwriters we ever had in Minneapolis. I mean, I was a huge fan of Soul Asylum for a long time. So, to me, it's a really incredible experience and an honor to play with all of those guys. I mean, Michael Bland has been one of my heroes as a musician. I mean, he's legendary in Minneapolis. He's legendary worldwide, but Minneapolis, like when you start playing music, people would always be talking about this mysterious Michael Bland, the guy
Yeah.
that has perfect pitch and knows everybody's parts and and so he was a very, very important person and is a very important person in our music scene. And Jeremy Tapero, the bass player now, is a guy that I've known for years, and our paths have intersected so many times with our different bands and stuff. He's done so many things. So
He's been
all
doing it for a couple of years, right? He's been
he's
bass player
been,
for a
yeah,
few
yeah,
years.
yeah. He's been playing for, he started actually when I joined the band. He shortly after started guitar teching. And he's a multi-talented person. He can play anything and produce music, and he can do anything. And Winston Roy has been the bass player for a long time. He's in
Yeah.
New York, and I think with logistics, and proximity, and it things kind of evolved in a different way, and but they're all great dudes. Love all of them. So feel fortunate in that way.
But yeah, you've really been kind of lucky. Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was what happened, and then that started taking all of not all of my time, but a lot of my professional time, and then Moshi Moshi was something that got put on the back burner just out of necessity until there was the opportunity to get
Right.
that going and complete the project. So yeah,
And you had started playing. You guys hadn't written yet. You guys had done a little bit of touring with Soul Asylum.
yeah,
Where did everything happen for you guys when the whole epidemic apocalypse of COVID happened? Like, did it
yeah.
really like shut you guys down fast? You guys kind of trying to trudge through it like some bands.
Well, what happened was we were on tour supporting the first singles for the latest Soul Asylum record, Hurry Up and Wait. So the tour was going really well. It was like, most of the shows we were getting either, they were either sold out or close to that most of the time. The momentum was just really picking up. So that I think at that point I'd been in the band for, well, it was 2016. So this was back in 2020. So or yeah, I think it was 2020. So I've been in the band for 4 years, and I had seen that this was really building somewhere. Like the people were getting excited about the new music, singles were going somewhere, and we were in. It was kind of like we were in our own universe on the tour bus, where you hear about news and stuff, and I try to follow with current events and things, and we were fully aware of the fact that the world was changing around us, except you don't really see it until it really hits. And the way I guess I saw it was we would hear about shows getting canceled, and we would hear about things like shortages and people hoarding things and all that kind of stuff. And we were at some point in the tour where some of the last shows were getting canceled. We were supposed to go to South by Southwest, that got canceled, and it was like watching the road crumble in front of you. And suddenly we were in California. We did our last show in Los Angeles at the Tarragon Theater. And, like that show had technically sold out, but we were like, there's only, it was maybe like maybe three quarters full. But we're like, a quarter of the people didn't even show up and they bought tickets. And we're like, what's going on? And, obviously now in retrospect, it's so clear what was going on. It was a pandemic and people stopped going. And then it was like the next city was San Diego was the next one. We got there and then that show got canceled. And then it was suddenly we found out we're flying home and the tour was cut. I think it was 2.5 weeks short or something. I don't quite remember. But, so we were sent home and that was just kind of earth shattering in a way. I mean, yes, it was kind of, and there's some good things, you get to go home and you have some off time. That's when I started making a solo record because I realized, okay, well, I have this time that I never have that I can do something. I always am writing songs, so I could develop that. And then I hadn't really, been seeing my, just working so much. It was like my daughter was real interested in, spending a lot of time, in a really good way. And it, so just life really changed. And it was, we tried to continue to connect with people. We did weekly, Dave and I just did weekly online
quarantines.
Yeah, the quarantine sessions.
Those are great.
Well, cool. I'm glad you liked them. They were, it was fun for us. It was really a good way to have a sincere connection with people when we couldn't do it in person. And we let them into basically us hacking through, song. I shouldn't say hacking through, but we were digging pretty deep in the catalog.
No, but you guys, you could tell it was fun. You could feel the energy. That's what I'm saying. You could feel the energy between you two from those kind of things, those real moments, That's what the fans really like. That's what people really like to see. So.
Well, it's good to hear. I mean, that was our only really way of really doing anything. And then the album came out and we did a whole release day online. And it was just Dave and I, we would do an interview and we do like a live performance for whatever magazine's Instagram or, and it was just a full entire day of online release celebration performances and interviews and things. And it was actually really cool. And the album ended up doing well. And
good.
I think we lucked out that we had management and a label that was able to figure out how to do things under those circumstances, and so we kept on and then we were working on new music. We did a few stream concerts and then we just got, we just had a full length tour not long ago. So, we just got done with that. It was like our summer tour and it's different out there. It's not back to normal. It really isn't. It's like, I know some, maybe some bands and some genres have like an audience that it is normal, but it's not for alternative rock music.
No.
You just have, it's complicated. It's not, I don't think I could even explain.
There's no wrong thing. I had tickets for one concert and then because it was at a fairgrounds, we decided not to go because who was going to have what, how coverage, everyone's on top of each other in a concert. I'm like, I just can't, I feel like the episode of The Simpsons with Mr. Burns, when he's got the shoebox, he's got the Kleenex boxes on his feet and he's like living alone, like in the house away from people, I just want to stay away from germs. I don't even like getting a cold. So this whole pandemic's been awful.
Yeah, right. I can completely understand.
This is going to change things. I mean, that's the other thing. It's really interesting talking to people, musicians that are on the road and like used to a certain thing. And then you're not. And then you're home with your kids or the wife and the spouses and this and that. And all of a sudden they're like, whoa, this is kind of different. I kind of like this. At first it's like kind of too much. And then they're kind of like getting into it. So I'm curious to see how touring is going to go in the whole process in the future with a lot of bands now. If they're going to be like slowly speeding up again, like I got to get out of the house or, smaller tours. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
How does it affect you? You think you're like, you got a mix or like, you're like, I don't know if I can go out as much now.
Well, I feel like I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a lot about what I do like doing and what I don't like doing. And, you know, I think, I don't know, it felt really extreme coming home. There are really amazing things about, um, you know, the positives of being home and having that kind of time far outweighs the negatives. But you know, there were certainly a lot of crazy things going on. Like, for example, my daughter was in kindergarten at the time. Well, you know, the kindergartners got sent home, you know, to be homeschooled. And meanwhile, I'm trying to reinvent my career, you know,
Yeah.
and work, you know, because you don't, you know, it's not like musicians don't, you know, you don't have like unemployment in the same way. You got to,
Right.
you need to create your new opportunities. And so I was working a lot and from home trying to homeschool basically. I mean,
Which is the worst thing ever, right? You're like,
right,
I don't even want
right,
to go to
right.
school and I'm going to teach somebody something.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was like, you know, in the very beginning and before, you know, and everybody was trying their best, like teachers were trying so hard. But the thing is, like a kindergartner at that stage, you know, they don't quite know how to navigate around on an iPad yet. And the teachers didn't know how to do this. I think they probably had a balance of just trying to make sure anything was put in place for the students, and they probably didn't want parents to feel like the kids weren't getting an education, so maybe it overshot it a little bit. But all I know is like at the very beginning, I was like, this is impossible. I'm trying to work full time plus um, it required me to be doing something nonstop to
yeah.
help get through school because there's no way, you know, at the time a 5-year-old is going to stay on target and like know how to join their meetings and do these things. Now she can do it. She's 7. It's totally different. But at 5, that was,
It's how she's in college now. It's totally
yeah,
different now. She's
totally
7.
different.
She's going to
But
college now. She
they learned
drives.
fast. Yeah, they learned fast, like how to do this stuff. But that first year was, you know, coming off that, it was like, wow, it was rough. And we had a lot of other, you know, there were a lot of other kind of tragic things going on in life around that time. So between those things, it was a very strange time. But, you know, there were good things in it. And I look back and I go, well, you know, I know I don't want to be, I am busy still, but I don't want to be doing what I was quite doing before, you know, where I'm a basically, you know, sometimes you feel like you're just a working machine and you're gone.
Yep.
You know, it's like you need to have connections. You need to, you know, that stuff is more important than other things.
Yeah, your kid
So,
really needs you to
yeah,
be around at some point,
your
otherwise,
kid needs you. Yeah, yeah,
they'll be up at the bell
yeah,
tower or something, some kind of Kennedy
yeah.
assassination. You got to make sure they're there, ground them. Well, and it's funny because like any talk to you, whether it's doing this a show or at work, I do IT in Zoom, no matter who it was, always had a kid or a dog come by. That's what I was laughing about earlier. It's paramount to any band I've ever did, no matter who big or how small or work or not. Everyone always has something that comes into the
Yeah.
screen and has to manage it. I mean, that's just part of the thing now. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of like leveled out everything, kind of made the world a little different. And I'm sure you learned you never want to teach
What's
after
that?
all that, right?
No, so well, here's the ironic thing is I do actually, I have independent
Well,
students that I do. Well, yeah, but right.
guitar, right? Yeah, I mean
Right,
like
right, right,
teaching,
right.
like
Music, yeah. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean I have like this immense respect for teachers that are my mom was a teacher, my dad was actually a teacher as well. I mean he was not in high school, but I have a huge respect for teachers and especially now I feel like, you know, what they're doing is very, very
oh,
challenging. There's so many uphill battles that they have, you know, and then the public doesn't really appreciate sometimes what they're doing and what the
yeah.
sacrifices they're making and what and how hard they have to work for at the end of the day what's not necessarily the highest return on their time. I mean it's like it's a pretty selfless field to
It's
be
probably one
in.
of the worst careers right now
Yeah,
to be in. It's
I
got
mean
really hard.
yeah, yeah, I feel fortunate like our daughter's in the school where it's excellent and the teachers are amazing and the staff is amazing and we don't have parents like, you know,
The crazy, yeah, I know.
yeah, we don't have people like, you know, being basically rude and like kind of, you know, I mean, attacking them for doing their job, you know?
The helicopter parents have gotten worse over
Yeah,
the years. I'm glad my kids are past that too. I don't know.
yeah,
I mean, I have one in high school and it's pretty good. I'm pleased. I got no complaints.
yeah.
I just want to cry. They're like, Dad, can you teach me math? I'm like, no, 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 no.
Hmm.
Don't you have a teacher or something for that? So while you're doing that, you work on this great album, your Moshi Moshi album, right?
So,
Through all that, this is a great album I want to talk about.
well, thank you. Appreciate that. So, yeah, and that was like I said, we started making that record, and that was like the first thing I intended to do when the Melismax slowed down. Some of those songs really weirdly came into shape, like where it felt like very 2020, when some of them were significantly pre 2020, but strangely related to what was going on, So the bulk of the work had been done way before then, but it was really actually I think it was before that tour. Yeah, so it was pre-pandemic that
Yeah, a couple of these singles were out. A couple of these songs were
yeah,
pre-out earlier,
yeah.
which is interesting because I do feel like it does fit. It's a very cohesive album, but it has a sound that's kind of different. I'm looking down, excuse me, at the song titles, and they really kind of cross a lot of different types of music styles. I think, and if it's good, but it's really like it feels like there's like a sometimes or 70s or 80s and some rock and but like what you do, it's always got that pop hook to it, so it's not leaving it to keep it on. Was that conscious the way you wrote that, or is it just kind of how the songs came out?
No, it was conscious. A couple of things influenced that. One, I've always liked bands that go all over the map. And I mean, just to use the most cliche, obvious example, the Beatles. It's like, well, the Beatles, if you take a record like, well, any of their records where they did, like the mid and later Beatles, they would do something where it's like this song's with, this style, and they would do a different style. But you always knew it was the Beatles because the
Right.
voice, that was the thing that unified.
So, but the
Oh,
Beatles do sound a certain song where they do when they sing. It's the same pop harmonies though that ties in everything else. Though, no matter what they're playing, whether it's some Indian sitar influence, you're still going to hear the harmonies and that pop song in there.
yeah, absolutely. So the idea was to be able to, kind of cross some stylistic genres, within a reason, I suppose. But the voices were the thing that was going to unify it, and maybe the songwriting style,
Yeah.
through any of those changes. And I've also always really loved albums that just go places, where they don't like here's their sound, and then it sounds like they set up the amps and the drums, and they just record the whole album. I mean, there are some amazing albums made that way. Don't get me wrong, and I love some of them. I mean, some of my favorite XX were made that way, but I prefer, as someone making the music, I like to use, recording as more of a creative palette, where you can try different things and try different sounds and mix it up a lot. So I like albums that sound like mixtapes, where it's like, oh, we'll
Well,
put
that's a
this.
good. That's a good example. Yeah, that's kind of what it would.
Yeah, it's like
Because you guys sound like the same band, but you also sound like different bands too.
yeah. So that's kind of how I think of it. Like I think about if I used to love making mixed tapes, that was like
That's why. Yeah.
yeah, it was like one of the most fun things to do. Like you'd think about, oh, there's, this much space on the cassette left, and I can get that. Oh, I could put a Descendants song that's 20 seconds here, because it's like, and then surprising people with things. That was always really fun. So I think there's some relationship between that, that pastime from the 90s to
Yeah.
now, that's like a thing that is translated into making albums. And then, the other thing too, like producers like Quincy Jones, I always thought were amazing. I mean, he's a phenomenal musician all the way around, but he really thought about every song on an album being very specifically as far as like why it's there, so you don't ever put a song on there just because you had it. It's got to be like, this song is there for a reason. It holds a space. It's not repeating something else. It's not filler. It's there because it's like part of a cinematic experience or a movie or something,
I'm the kind of guy who loves full albums, even real albums, or that you're
Yeah.
not gonna make cassettes. So that's one of the fun things about this is you really, it's a full album. You're not like you have to skip or like it's not anything like that. I generally don't listen to music. It's a lot of skipping of music.
Yeah.
It's solid the whole way through. But it really is interesting the different sounds that you really kind of came up with. What would you like? Fast as I can, and then like cinematic, kind of different. You know,
Yeah. Right. Those are different in And yeah, I mean, I think every song just kind of follows what it feels like the song should be. You know, and cinematic feels like it should be, I don't know, synth
Seems
and um, it's I don't know. They just have different feelings, you
right.
know. And Fast as I Can is like kind of a, for weirdly, like we noticed a lot of hip hop, stations and websites and stuff
Yeah,
gravitated towards that song. It was weird. Like it didn't, uh,
really.
yeah, it was very strange. Like it was getting added on hip hop things. And we were like, well, that's interesting. I mean, didn't see that coming at all,
No,
but
I don't see that. That's cool. That's really cool,
yeah,
especially because it's so different.
yeah,
But
right.
I wouldn't. That's not what I. That's not the track I would have picked. That I would have
No,
released to hip
right.
hop
That
station. I would have.
never, right. That never
You would have had.
occurred to
Yeah.
me either. But you know,
Huh.
it's got, it's just it's more, it's like guitar driven. I don't know. There's a little influence of Johnny Marr. I love him as a guitar
Yep.
player. So there's some, just when you spend a lot of time as a kid listening to somebody, it starts to, you know, work its way into your psyche, and it just becomes a part of your own identity mixed with other things that you got into. So,
How
um,
did you write this on guitar or did you write some on keyboard? How did you come up with these songs for them to be so different? Was it
um,
just
well, it depends on the song. Really, my process for that is almost always, uh, capturing the inspiration. I could, every song's got a different story. There was some part like Fast as I Can, since you brought it up.
right?
That one I had a riff, which was the chord, like the chord structure for the song. It
Mhm.
was like a chord progression with a particular rhythm to it. That was an idea. I had a title, and I had a couple of the melodic ideas in there that were all kind of separate, and I just started developing it. But usually it's something like that. Sometimes it's keyboard, sometimes it's guitar. Um, in the past, I've written more on keyboard. I think most of the stuff from Moshi Moshi, I ended up writing, like there was an idea in my head first. I document that idea on my iPhone. I'll just like sing it into it, or,
Yeah.
go into GarageBand and just make a quick note of some kind that I can remember later. But I did want to keep that album more, well, the more in my mind, like I wanted to be using like real amps, keep it more real than, um, so easy. And there's nothing wrong with it, but, it's so easy to just use everything digital and not have anything real. And I wanted to make sure, like the strings are,
Right.
real, got a string player to come in and wrote out the parts by hand, and she play, stuff like that. Like I just wanted to try to make it, for my own personal taste, to feel like it was
But
authentic.
I
And
think it's going to play good too for you. I'm sorry for you to actually play live because I've seen you guys online. You guys of course have done some, some of these songs are online too, so that it feels pretty authentic to what the song is. You don't have to like you know pipe in other stuff.
right. I mean, we do have like there's a ton of layers. I mean, that's one thing about that album is
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. Like if you get like if you put on like earbuds or headphones, and you really, and that was a goal of that record, was to make layers and make it really interesting for listening over and over again. I mean, that's,
Mhm.
some of my favorite albums. You do that, and you can always hear something new, or you go, but also to make it not rely on that stuff. So if you did play it with just like a guitar, a voice or two voices, or
Right.
whatever you do, you could strip it down and you could perform it, and it's not like, oh, it's missing, everything.
Yeah. Like I think it's the last one I just saw was I Would Die for You doing the live version of that.
Oh,
It's
right,
pretty
sure,
it's a good version and it doesn't really it kind of stands on its own where it's not like you're like oh that's not like the album. It's kind
sure,
of like its own thing, which I dig. I like when a band can go out there and still kind of do a version of their own music
yeah,
that still sounds strong. It can be different. I
right, right.
respect. No, I respect you want to do different if you're playing, especially you play the same song all the time. I
Mm,
get why bands want to do that. Be
yeah,
boring. So
right.
this is fantastic. Everyone's gonna follow the links. You gotta check out these albums. So the future of just as a wrap up, what do you got? So what are you doing now with the band? You gonna be doing a little playing with this band a little bit out, some Soul Asylum now because new album writing, or you know what I mean? Where you
Yeah,
at?
I mean, it's all about new music now. Soul Asylum's been working on new music since, really since the pandemic. I mean, so a new album is in the works. I've been, as I think I mentioned here, like I started working on a solo record when I got off the
Yep.
tour. So the when the pandemic started, and so there are a lot of like very topical songs of that I started writing and working on and developing, and so I've already released two singles for that that are on Spotify and iTunes and Apple Music, and I'm working on a music video for the first single for that, and then a full length record to follow. So there's going to be a cassette EP, followed by a full length LP and music videos, the whole deal. So
Yeah.
that's, and then, the Melismatics had started playing a bit here and there. And so everything is active and
It's a lot to balance.
it's a lot to balance. Yeah.
With the solo stuff, you can do like a single at a time. Some bands actually were doing like a single one at a time. And then when they're done with all of them,
Mm-hmm.
10 or whatever the number is, they'd be like, all right, I'm gonna release it as an album, a special limited vinyl if people want it. Like they were kind of feeling out the audience and as they went. That was
Yeah.
just part of the models that people are doing now. Is that
Yeah.
kind of you or just a partial
Well,
version?
that's what we did with Hurry Up and Wait. I mean, there were I think four singles is my memory. I don't remember. I think it was like we did Dead Letter and If I Told You. I can't remember, but we did that, and then we did that for there was an acoustic EP, and that's exactly what we did. The entire EP was released as
Yep.
singles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, however many songs are on it, and then it was out. And I would imagine, it's just too soon to say for Soul Asylum how we would do that because we're just not at that stage yet. But I would imagine
Totally get it.
it's kind of the way it works now. You get
Yeah.
more.
I don't know if you're going to do it too. So I actually meant more for you. I know
Oh,
Soul Asylum's
yeah.
a bigger machine
Oh,
itself. I
yeah,
figured
right,
because you're in control of your own
that's
destiny.
right. Yeah, yes. So for that, for sure, I've already done, like I was saying, for the solo record, I did two
Right.
singles. We did that for Moshi Moshi as well. I mean, we did, as you pointed out, there were singles way back in 2016, and we had done several to set up the record once it was ready for release. So, solo project, I'm just getting that where it even exists anywhere because, I forgot about this. Like when you start a new thing, it's like you suddenly need you need social media, you need websites, you need all this stuff, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, this is a lot of work. This is kind of a pain. But to kind of get that going, the singles help you kind of ease into it and let it get out there. So it's not all just like dropping at one time where an album's out and suddenly you have to create a world on social media out of the blue. So
And social media is really hard nowadays too.
oh yeah,
to do it. So, well, when you're done, totally done, and some other stuff, maybe we'll have to come back again and keep promoting you and keep doing this. All right. I want to thank you for being on the show, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you. It was fun.